everyone and welcome! Today we are gonna complete the trifecta of kids from Zone, as today we are going to talk about the boy who shattered time. Ekko was born with a genius level of intellect. He constructed his first simple machine before he could even crawl. His parents, Ina and With, were instantly amazed by his talents, and they vowed to secure a great future for him. In their mind, Zone was a place full of pollution and crime, and not a place where they could raise a genius child. They worked in factories long into the night, and took dangerous jobs just to make sure their son would have a chance to get up into Piltover. But Ekko saw things differently. He witnessed his parents aging beyond their years, trying to live off of nothing while selling their handmade goods to wealthy Piltovans for small profit. Profit they would never see thanks to the greedy factory wood overseers. Ekko saw all the suffering his parents endured for him, but he just didn't share their vision. He wasn't interested in the city of progress, for he saw what Zone truly was. A dynamic city overflowing with energy and potential, innovations behind every corner, a place where cultures merged into one society, where immigrants united by a single desire to forge a better future. But even they were nothing compared to native Zonites. Not the Barons, not even the augmented thugs or the bottom-feeding scum. It was the Scrappers, the Camjacks and the gardeners taking care of the little of their fruits they have. These and so many more were the heart and soul of the city. They were resourceful, resilient and industrious. These were the traits that push people forward. They built a culture out of disasters and pressed on where others would have perished. Ekko learned he wasn't the only one seeing all that potential. He became friends with scrappy orphans, runaways and anyone who shared his excitement. Each one of them had unique talents, from climbing and sculpting to painting and planning. Many Zonites gave up on their education to become someone's apprentice. These kids called themselves lost children. They challenged each other to race through the border markets, climb from the dark clubs of Entersol up to the entertainment area called Promenade. They ran wild and free, answering to no one except one of their own. To stand out from criminal gangs and other campunks, Ekko and his friends swore to keep their bodies whole. Augmentation, to them, was unacceptable, as well as stealing from those who had nothing, or at least less than them. This narrowed their targets into the category of upper-crust pilties or tech-enhanced bullies. They decorated their hideouts with stolen goods and works of art painted directly on their walls. The lost children of Zone felt invincible. As Ekko grew up, his inventions became greater and more complex, requiring exotic components that needed to be liberated from the scrapyards. For that reason alone, Ekko and his crew became known around their local scrapyard for constantly digging through the unused trash. Ekko found it funny how the Barons guarded their junk so heavily. It's not like they would ever use it for anything. But he, on the other hand, he could put it all to a good use. One night, while Ekko raided through a recently demolished laboratory, he found something interesting. A shard of a blue-green gem that glittered with magical energy. He quickly searched around and found more fragments of this glowing jewel. The shards hummed like they were trying to sing a broken melody, and the song grew louder when the shards were near other pieces. He searched through tons of debris and smelly rubbish, but in the end he found them all. Every child of Zone heard the tales about Hextech crystals, gems that powered weapons and heroes. They could create energy on their own. Hextech crystals had the potential to change the world, and now he held a broken one in his hands. Before he could celebrate what he found, the place was crawling with Vigilnauts scanning the ruins. He knew what they were looking for, and with a bit of luck he slipped out undetected. Ekko spent hours studying and experimenting with the crystal. The shards surged when put together, and when Ekko tried to separate them, they fought back with what seemed to be magnetic force, as if the shards remembered being whole. For some reason, while studying them, Ekko felt like he remembered that moment, only slightly differently. His hands couldn't keep up with all the ideas he had on his mind. During one of his less than scientific experiments, the gem exploded into a vortex of shimmering dust, triggering a temporal distortion. Ekko opened his eyes to see several splintered realities, and several echoes of himself. Panic caught up to him as he couldn't absorb what was happening. But after some tense coordination between Ekko and his paradoxes, they repaired the hole he had torn in the fabric of reality. Eventually, Ekko harnessed the shattered crystal's temporal power into a device that would allow him to manipulate small portions of time. Well, at least in theory. But before he could test it even further, his friends challenged him to climb the Old Hungry. And of course he couldn't chicken out, so he slung the device over his shoulder and brought it along. As they climbed the clock tower in the heart of Old Zone, they would occasionally stop to paint a caricature of a prominent Pilty or two. They were near the top when a handhold gave way, causing one of his friends to slip and fall off the spire. Instinctively, as if he had done it 1,000 times before, Ekko activated his device. The world shattered around him and he was wrenched backward through swirling particles of time. The hair on his arms tingled with electricity. A strange sensation clouded his mind. Then, he saw his friend reach for the same rotting plank to repeat his fatal mistake. It cracked and the boy fell again, but this time Ekko reached out and grabbed him. He swung him to a nearby ledge, but he misjudged the distance and tossed him right into the crushing gears of the tower. Whoops. He rewinded many times before finally saving his friend. To others it looked like he had godlike reflexes. He decided to tell his friends about the device, and he made them swear to keep quiet. But his friends realized they could do even more dangerous stunts now. After each trial and so much error, Ekko slowly mastered using his device, and soon he named it Zero Drive. After he got the device stable, he realized he could look for even more exotic components, fight enemies much bigger than him, and try every possible pickup line to always get the best first impression. The only limit was how much his body could take before exhaustion set in. Rumors and tales of Ekko's time-bending adventures quickly reached the ears of certain powerful people in both Zone and Piltover. Victor, a much respected and feared Zoanite scientist, was very interested in Ekko's genius. He even enhanced some of his enforcers and sent them after Ekko to make him join his services. The Piltovan inventor Jace, however, was eager to size up the boy and reverse engineer his technology. But Ekko values his independence too much. He has no desire to be part of anyone's agenda. In his wildest dreams, Ekko imagines his hometown rising and overshadowing Piltover with its true potential. He may not have a plan on how to do that yet, but he has all the time in the world to figure it out. It was a long day for Ekko. First, his friend Arjuna nearly killed himself while climbing the clock tower. He heard the crushing fall 18 times before he was finally able to stop the fall. Then he got into trouble with Clan Pharaohs and a gang of aggressive Vigilnauts surrounded him. Luckily, with the help of Zero Drive and his new invention Fleshbinder, he was able to get out. The Fleshbinder was meant to explode in a dazzling light and pull everything toward its center. But instead it froze midair, with its shrapnels hitting nearby enemies. Then it all imploded and reformed back in his hand. When Ekko finally got home, his body was tired but his mind was alert. His apartment was very basic but functional. His room was separated from the rest of the apartment with curtains. It was filled with discarded books and scrapped technologies. Today was one of the rare days his parents would be home early, and he had something to tell them. Mom, Dad. He practiced to his reflection, which stared back at him from the Z-Drive's shiny surface. I'm not going to apply to any of the Upside clans or the snooty Pilty school. I'm staying here, with you and my friends. I'll never turn back on Zone." The words were filled with confidence. He heard the jingle of the keys and quickly hid his Z drive under the table and draped a black cloth over it. The door opened and his parents returned for the first time that night. They looked like strangers to their own son. They did the same every night. They would shuffle home, buy a meal with whatever left they had, save the rest of their money for taxes and bribes, then fall asleep in their chairs until Ekko removed their work boots and helped them to their beds. But this time his mother had a small paper-wrapped package under her arm. "Hello, my little genius," said the mother with the last of her energy. Yet her expression in that moment of lightness when she saw her son sitting at the table, waiting, was something no one could fake. "Hey mom, hey dad." The three of them hadn't sat at a table as a family in such a long time. His father beamed with pride. Then he brushed through his son's mohawk. "I thought I told you to cut that hair," he said. "It'll make you stand out in Piltover academies too much. The factory wood's the only place you can look like that. They'll take anyone, and you are not anyone. How are your applications coming?" This was the moment. Ekko felt the words he'd practiced swimming up to be spoken. The hope in his father's eyes gave him pause. His mother filled the empty moment before Ekko could. "We have a treat for you." She set the package on the table. They pulled their chairs closer to see Ekko's reaction. Ekko unwrapped the paper without a single tear to reveal a loaf of sweetbread. The crust was covered with honey and nuts. The cake was from Eileen. She made the finest pastries in all Zone, and they weren't the cheapest. Ekko looked up to see his parents' beaming eyes. "This is too much," he said. "We need meat and a real supper, not sweets." "We would never forget your name day," his father said with a chuckle. "Looks like you did though." It was right, he did. Ekko snapped back to reality. "The landlord will have our heads if we're late with rent again. Let us worry about that. You deserve something nice," his mother said. "Go on, you can have cake for dinner once a year." "What are you going to eat?" "I'm not hungry," she said. "I ate at work," his father lied. "Cheese and meat from Piltover, real nice stuff." They watched Ekko take a tiny bite from the cake. It was sweet and buttery, so rich the taste stuck to his tongue. He divided the cake into 3 pieces, but his mother shook her head while humming the name day song. His father would have joined in singing if he hadn't already fallen asleep in his chair. Ekko looked back at his mother, who was slowly reaching her own slumber while still humming. This is what held him back. They had so much hope and they sacrificed so much for him. He couldn't just break their hearts like that. At least, not tonight. Maybe tomorrow. Ekko didn't finish his cake beyond the first bite. Instead, he started up his Z drive. He traveled back in time until he heard the jingle of the keys again. Then, he did it again, and again, and again, and again. He didn't change a single thing. The light in his mother's eyes, his father's proud smile as he fell asleep. These were the moments he wanted to keep forever. But eventually, even he gave up under his exhaustion, as the warmth of his mother's voice lulled him to sleep. Did you enjoy this video? Because if you did, you can not only like it below and subscribe, but you can also follow me on Twitter, Facebook and Discord. I really appreciate you sitting down and listening to my stories. Well, they are not technically mine, but if you wanna hear more, you can click on the links that will appear in front of you. You know I really appreciate all of your feedback. And with that, as absolutely always, thank you come again.